Hello, everyone. James is here. Welcome back to Easy English Talks podcast. Today, we're going to dive into some really useful English expressions, idioms. Have you heard of them?
Oh, absolutely. Idioms, they can be a bit tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because their meaning isn't always clear just from the words themselves.
Right.
But that's what makes them so interesting.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much more fun when you start to learn them.
What's fascinating about idioms, I think, is that they give you like a glimpse into the culture and history of a language. It's like unlocking a secret code that helps you understand how native speakers really think and express themselves.
Absolutely. And today, we're going to make learning these idioms fun and easy by using colors as our guide.
Ooh,
So
colors are
we'll be exploring white idioms, blue idioms, and a few others along the way.
Okay.
Are you ready to add some color to your English?
Yes, I am.
Let's get started.
Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack our first category, white idioms. And the first one that often comes to mind is white elephant. Now, you might be picturing a large white animal, but this idiom has a completely different meaning.
That's right. In English, a white elephant refers to something that might seem valuable at first,
Okay.
but ends up being more trouble than it's worth.
More trouble than it's worth, okay.
It's something expensive to maintain, but doesn't really have a useful purpose.
Like that treadmill you bought with the best of intentions, but now it's just collecting dust in the corner of your room. Expensive, takes up space, and not really serving you anymore.
A perfect example. And this idiom actually has a fascinating historical origin.
Oh, does really?
It comes from the practice of Siamese kings gifting albino elephants, which were considered sacred, to rivals they disliked. These elephants couldn't be put to work, but were incredibly costly to maintain, effectively ruining the recipient financially.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sneaky way to get back at someone. It makes the idiom so much more memorable knowing that story behind it.
Exactly. Understanding the origin can often make an idiom's meaning much clearer.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another white idiom. White lie.
Okay.
Now, we all know what a lie is,
Right.
but what makes it white?
Well, a white lie is a small, harmless lie that we tell to avoid hurting someone's feelings or causing unnecessary conflict. It's usually told with good intentions.
So imagine your friend cooks you dinner, and, well, let's just say it wasn't their best effort.
Okay.
You might tell them it was delicious even if you aren't crazy about it.
Right.
That's a classic white lie.
Precisely. It's about being polite and considerate of others' feelings.
But isn't a white lie still a lie? Where do we draw the line between being polite and being dishonest?
Ooh, that's a great question, and one that people often debate.
Right.
Some believe that any lie, even a small one, is wrong. Others argue that white lies are a necessary part of social interaction and can help maintain harmony in relationships. It really depends on the situation and your own personal values.
I think that's a really good point, something to think about for sure. Now, before we move on to blue idioms, there's one more white idiom I want to touch on. White collar.
Ah, yes. This idiom is often used to describe a category of jobs.
Exactly. And unlike white elephant, this one has nothing to do with the color. White literally. So what kind of jobs are we talking about when we say white collar?
Well, white-collar jobs typically refer to those that are professional, administrative, or managerial in nature. They often involve working in an office setting.
So we're talking about like doctors, lawyers, teachers, accountants, those kinds of professions.
Exactly. You might also hear people talk about white-collar workers, referring to the people who hold these types of positions.
Interesting. So there's a way of categorizing jobs based on the type of work involved.
That's right. It's a helpful distinction, especially when you're talking about different sectors of the economy or career paths.
Well, we've covered a few white idioms. What do you say we take a dip into the world of blue idioms next?
Sounds good to me. Let's see what shades of blue we can discover. So are we ready for some blue idioms then?
Let's dive into those blue idioms.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what kind of expressions we can dig up in this category.
Right.
And I think maybe to start, let's talk about blue collar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll often hear this contrasted with the white collar jobs that we just talked about.
You're exactly right. Blue-collar jobs typically involve manual labor, skilled trades, working with your hands.
So we're talking about construction workers, mechanics, plumbers, electricians.
Yes, yeah.
All those essential jobs that really kind of keep things running smoothly.
Precisely. And historically, These jobs often involved wearing like blue work shirts or overalls,
Mm.
which is how the idiom blue collar likely came about.
Oh, that makes sense. So it was a very literal, it was a literal thing,
It was.
and then it became this way to categorize. Okay, so that makes sense. It's a way of distinguishing these jobs from the more office-based white-collar roles. Yeah.
Right. And while white-collar jobs were often seen as more prestigious in the past,
Okay.
there's been a growing appreciation, I think, for the skills and the value that blue-collar workers bring to society.
Oh, for sure. And I think we've all really learned over the last few years how essential those jobs are
Absolutely.
and how much we rely on those people and how skilled they are
Yeah,
at their jobs. It's definitely true that we rely on both blue-collar and white-collar workers for our everyday lives. They're both essential parts of the economy.
absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another blue idiom. Have you ever experienced something happening out of the blue?
Out of the blue. Oh, I think we've all had those moments. It's when something totally unexpected happens, right? So you're going
Yes.
about your day and suddenly, bam, something surprising occurs.
That's a great way to put it. Out of the blue describes those events that catch us completely off guard.
Like winning the lottery or getting a call from a long-lost friend.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments that make you stop and think, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Exactly. It adds an element of surprise and spontaneity to life. I like that.
I like that too. Speaking of unexpected events, what about the expression once in a blue moon? Does that literally mean that the moon turns blue?
I wish it were that simple, but unfortunately, no. Once in a blue moon is an idiom that means something happens very rarely.
So it's those events that only happen every once in a while, like
Ah.
seeing a shooting star or finding a four-leaf clover.
Those are perfect examples. It's a way of emphasizing how infrequent something is, and while the moon doesn't actually turn blue very often, the phrase blue moon does have some astronomical basis.
Really? Oh, tell me more about this.
So a blue moon is a term used to describe the second full moon that occurs within a single calendar month.
Okay.
This is a relatively rare occurrence happening, well, once in a blue moon.
So there is a real phenomenon behind this idiom.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. I always like when there's a little bit more to it than just the expression. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about a more relatable blue idiom, feeling blue or having the blues. We all experience this from time to time.
We certainly do. It's simply a way of saying that you're feeling sad, down, or melancholic.
It's that feeling you get when you're going through a tough time, like a breakup, a disappointment, or even just a rainy day.
And while it's perfectly normal to feel blue sometimes, it's important to reach out for support if those feelings become overwhelming or persistent.
Yeah, that's an important reminder. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And there are people who care and want to help.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even talking about how you're feeling can make a big difference.
I agree. Okay, let's wrap up our blue idioms with one that has a more historical and social significance. Blue blood.
Ah, yes. This idiom is often used to describe someone who comes from a noble or aristocratic family.
So it's not about actually having blue blood flowing through their veins.
Right. But rather about their lineage and their social standing.
Exactly. It's a way of distinguishing those who are considered part of like the elite class, often associated with wealth, power, and privilege.
I've definitely heard this idiom used in movies and TV shows, especially historical dramas set in times of royalty and nobility.
It's definitely a common trope in those genres, and it reflects how in many societies there has historically been a hierarchy based on birthright and family lineage.
So we've explored a variety of blue idioms from jobs and unexpected events to sadness and social status. It's amazing how a single color can evoke so many different meanings and associations.
It really is,
Yeah.
and it shows how language can be so rich and nuanced.
I agree. Now, I know we spent a lot of time on white and blue, but there are a few other really colorful idioms that I think our listeners will find interesting. Are you up for exploring a few more expressions?
Absolutely. I'm always eager to delve into the world of idioms.
Okay, great. Let's start with silver spoon. This idiom always makes me think of wealth and privilege.
You're right on the mark. To be born with a silver spoon in your mouth means to be born into a wealthy and privileged family.
It suggests that they've had advantages and opportunities that many others don't have access to.
Exactly. It's like starting life on a higher rung of the ladder without having to work as hard to achieve success.
Now, on the flip side, we have golden opportunity, which has a much more positive connotation.
It certainly does. A golden opportunity is a rare and valuable chance to achieve something great.
It's like that perfect moment when everything aligns and you have a shot at fulfilling your dreams.
It's about seizing those moments and making the most of them because they don't come around very often.
Yeah, you really have to be ready to grab those golden opportunities when they present themselves.
Absolutely. And sometimes it takes courage and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone to make the most of those opportunities.
Now, let's talk about a phrase that's often used in the business world: golden parachute.
This idiom refers to a large financial payout that is given to an executive if they are forced to leave a company, often due to a merger or acquisition.
So even if the company isn't doing well, these executives still get a hefty sum of money on their way out.
It can be seen as a way to soften the blow of losing their job and to incentivize them to cooperate during a transition. However, it's also a topic of debate, as some argue that these payouts are excessive, especially when the company is struggling.
Yeah, it definitely raises some interesting questions about fairness and corporate responsibility.
It does. And it's a good example of how idioms can reflect broader social and economic issues.
Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about an emotion that we've all experienced at some point: envy. And the idiom that captures this feeling perfectly is green with envy.
Ah, yes, the pangs of jealousy. To be green with envy means to be extremely envious of someone else's possessions, achievements, or good fortune.
It's that feeling you get when your friend gets a promotion you were hoping for, or when someone buys that amazing car you've been dreaming of.
It's a natural human emotion. But it's important to remember that comparing ourselves to others can sometimes lead to negative feelings.
It's true, it's better to focus on our own journey and celebrate our own accomplishments.
Exactly. And remember, everyone is on their own unique path.
Now let's move on to a more positive idiom: green light. I always associate this with getting permission to move forward with something.
That's a great association. To get the green light means to receive approval or permission to proceed with a project or plan.
It's like a filmmaker finally getting funding for their movie, or a student getting accepted into their top choice university.
It's that moment of excitement and relief when you know you can finally move forward with your goals.
All right, let's talk about a phrase that can sometimes be a bit tricky: gray area.
A gray area refers to a situation or subject where the rules or guidelines are unclear or ambiguous.
It's like those ethical dilemmas where there's no easy right or wrong answer, and you have to weigh the potential consequences of different choices.
Or those legal cases where the laws are open to interpretation and it's difficult to determine if someone is guilty or innocent.
Those situations where things aren't black and white and there's a lot of room for debate.
Exactly. And navigating those gray areas often requires careful consideration and critical thinking.
Okay, for our final colorful idiom, let's talk about the black sheep.
This idiom often has a slightly negative connotation. It's used to describe someone who is considered different or unconventional, often in a way that is seen as negative or embarrassing to their family or group.
Like that family member who always makes impulsive decisions, or the one who chooses a completely different career path from everyone else.
It's that individual who stands out from the crowd, sometimes for the wrong reasons. However, it's important to remember that being the black sheep can also be a sign of individuality and a willingness to break away from societal norms.
That's a good point. Sometimes being different can lead to great things.
Absolutely. It's all about perspective.
Well, we've covered a wide range of colorful idioms today, from white elephants to black sheep and everything in between. It's been quite a journey through the world of idioms.
It has. And I think our listeners have probably learned a lot about how these colorful expressions add depth and richness to the English language.
So what does this all mean for you as an English learner? Why should you care about idioms?
Well, we kind of connect this to the bigger picture. Learning idioms is like unlocking a secret door to fluency and cultural understanding.
It's like finding the missing piece of the puzzle that helps you see the whole picture.
Precisely. By using idioms, you'll not only sound more natural, but also understand the subtleties and humor that are often embedded in English conversations.
You'll be able to connect with native speakers on a deeper level and truly appreciate the richness of the language.
It's about going beyond just the words themselves and understanding the cultural context behind these expressions.
So what are some tips for learning and remembering these colorful idioms? There's so many of them.
One of the best ways is to practice using them in context. Don't be afraid to try them out in your everyday conversations, even if you make a few mistakes at first.
Mistakes are part of the learning process, right?
Exactly. And the more you use them, the more natural they will become.
Another tip is to pay attention to how native speakers use idioms in movies, TV shows, and books.
That's a great way to pick up on the nuances of how and when to use them appropriately. You'll start to notice them everywhere.
You can also try creating your own examples or associating idioms with personal experiences. This can make them more memorable and easier to recall.
For example, if you're trying to remember green with envy, think about a time when you felt really jealous of someone. Maybe a friend got a new phone you really wanted or went on an amazing vacation.
Or when someone got the job you were hoping for. That feeling definitely makes green with envy stick in your mind.
Exactly. By connecting the idiom to a personal experience, it becomes more vivid and meaningful.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. We've explored a wide range of colorful idioms, from white elephants to black sheep and everything in between.
And we've highlighted how mastering these idioms can significantly enhance your fluency and cultural understanding.
Remember, learning a language is not just about memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It's about immersing yourself in the culture, embracing the nuances, and having fun with it.
It's like adding spices to a dish. Idioms give flavor and personality to your language.
So go out there, practice those idioms, and paint the town red with your newfound confidence.
And don't forget to keep exploring the fascinating world of English expressions. There's always something new to learn and discover.
Don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends. Bye, and see you next time. Bye-bye.